Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. On the face of all mankind, our numbers up and the dead for a time. Go along to get along in the tide by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The hordes upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's best. Worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotting, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve.
this entire time, and whether or not you should shop the bottom shelf at the liquor store.
Thanks, Joe. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. Sorry, forgot to plug up the microphone there. The amateur hour here at the Apollo. Thank you for gassing those geese, Dalton, and jumping in the chat. Thanks for letting us know you couldn't hear us, Joe. Appreciate that. We're all set there now. We got some sound going, so glad to have you with us this Sunday, October the 1st, 2023. We're coming to you live here from the Iron Mountain here in Carter County, Tennessee. And that's our monitor there. He's checking and making sure that we're good here. So.
Oh yeah, we even have some for
hit live here. There you go. We're good.
Look at that.
Appreciate that. Hey, that's pretty good sound too. Pretty good sound at that. That may just be your phone though. Your phone might have good speakers.
It's a Google Pixel. It's nothing special.
They have good speakers though, it sounds like.
It's quieter than the new Galaxy. I don't know how it would compare to others.
My wife has the S23 Ultra and it's super loud. And I've got the S9 Plus tablet for work and that thing is
the 23 is
got some bass in it, man. It's kind of surprising how good it sounds.
The only thing, Ashley's got the 20. She's got the Galaxy, the newest one.
Yeah.
I went to this is just me. And this works out sometimes in my benefit, very rarely. I went into the phone store feeling salty just because the Galaxy, the new one, every time they release a new phone, it seems like the updates make your phone worse. And like, we both had the new Galaxy, right? We bought them at the same time, or the previous incarnation, right? And we got to noticing that our phones would mess up in tandem. You can't explain it. It's just the weirdest stuff. Like they had, like, after one of the newest updates, both of our phones did this thing where the first couple of times you plugged it in, it would swear up and down there was water in the charger, and that you needed to uncharge it and dry it out before plugging it in. There was just nothing. And both our phones started doing that at once. It was a whole slew of things. So I went in. She went in thinking, well, you know what? Let's just stick with the good one. I got the Google Pixel, and the only thing that's better about it is it has a good camera. That's about it. But anyway.
I don't know. I've got a few-year-old. I got a S21 or something like that. Few-year-old Samsung, and it still runs really good. I'm surprised they haven't killed the battery on it yet because it's 3 years old.
I had a Galaxy all the way up from a 3. I said I had them from 3 all the way up until 20.
I've got like all my contacts and everything saved in my Samsung account and stuff, and so I just don't even want to fool with it. I'm just gonna.
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, Google has your entire life saved because they got us early, and so when they switched me over to Google, nothing changed.
Yeah, I didn't save. I purposefully didn't save my contacts on my Google addresses, because they have so much of my info anyway. I don't know that it matters, but I was like,
Samsung just gives it to me.
Yeah, probably. But I was like, well, at least I have some of it saved somewhere else. Then Google will have a slightly less intrusive view of my life, but they have a lot already. I mean, you think about it, you've got your email, your maps signed in. If you haven't turned off your location, and even if you have, they still know roughly where you are. Mm-hmm. It's funny how bad they get it sometimes, though. Maybe it's just a function of the internet that you're using, but it'll say you'll look for something. Say I'm looking for parts in Johnson City, and it'll say we show your location as Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I get that one all the time.
Thanks, I'm in Nashville all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I don't know. They get it pretty accurate a lot of the times too with what they think you want. But I will say, successfully, I really don't use VPNs. I don't use much of anything. I just try to confuse the algorithm of all things just through my absurd behavior. And currently, I'm proud to say, Google and YouTube, same company, think that I am a black woman who speaks Spanish.
I was going to say
that is a great accomplishment. I've had them thinking I was a person of Spanish-speaking origin for a while. But switching over to black woman has been a very proud achievement of mine.
Well, I wasn't able to convince Facebook that I was a gay cowboy a few years ago.
Did you just say you're gay and put a cowboy hat on? Because that's what it takes.
No, they didn't believe me. Somebody reported I had my Facebook account was set up as corned beef brisket, and somebody reported that I wasn't using my real name, and they shut down my account.
And an artist page though?
No, this was my personal
okay,
page.
okay.
Yeah. So I made a fake ID.
Reported it that you were.
I don't know. I know plenty. Somebody reported my aunt. Her name was Best Nana, and somebody reported her for not using her real name, and then she
I
had
had the real best Nana.
Well, it sucks, man. Because she had she had all her, all of her family photos and stuff on there. I think they finally did find a way to get access to them, but it really sucked that somebody reported her. Because, that's the only way they would have taken action against her page is if somebody reported it.
Yes,
but yeah, I figured if I told them that I was a gay country singer and that if I gave my real name, then people would know that I was gay. So I couldn't use my real name, and I made
some persecution.
Yeah, and I made a fake ID with corned beef brisket. And I said this, and then I said that's my real name. Or first I tried that, and then when they didn't fall for that, that's when I told them I was a gay cowboy.
And you do need anonymity.
It didn't work.
This world.
It didn't work. Yeah, I agree. We need anonymity on a lot of different places, and the internet is.
They didn't believe you were a gay cowboy. All you had to do was put a hat on and be gay.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. They didn't even give me a chance. I know I could have convinced them, but they just did. They didn't even want to hear it. Just kind of like YouTube. They don't want to. They didn't want to review our strike that we got either. It was all automated. You could tell it was. No way a human had time to review it.
What was the strike?
It was. I was reporting on something that Mike Lindell had said. And I made it very clear that I didn't agree with what Mike, or no, not that maybe not that I didn't agree with it, but
Feller.
Yeah, I made it very clear that these were not my words. This was Mike Lindell's words.
Okay.
That the election, he believed that the election was stolen from President Trump, and we were struck that episode was pulled down for election misinformation. Now, all we did was say that he had that symposium, and that was what he was asserting at his symposium. But that was enough for just that combination of words was enough for YouTube's automated algorithm or what the hell ever it is to trigger that and say, hey, these guys are spreading election misinformation. And I appealed it and said, hey, I never actually said that. And within like 3 minutes, the strike was upheld and the content was removed. So, and it was an old video too. That was a crazy thing. It wasn't like right when we did it. It was months after the fact that they actually removed it. So, I don't know. It was weird.
No, it does sound like a personal report actually. If it took that long for it to catch it.
Well, yeah, for somebody to have said it, maybe, I don't know. Somebody may have reported it, I guess. What's it? Oh, I thought we were something with the video there.
My phone was just deciding to download a bunch of stuff I don't want.
Oh, gotcha.
As normal.
Gotcha. So tonight's episode was inspired by a thread that Sargon of Akkad, the YouTuber who was banned from YouTube and banned from Twitter and stuff for basically having like traditional British not liberal like. Political liberal, but not political liberal, but
let's be fair.
Magna Carta.
You did go out there and really, like, I thought this is old. Like it's old YouTube when like we start talking about Sargon of Akkad. But I remember like people making fun of him for wanting to run for office to begin with. This is what got him canceled. Mm-hmm. But like, if I'm not mistaken, he pretty much sunk whatever party he was a part of, like, because just his very presence, because he kept making like rape jokes about one of the candidates and all kinds of, like he thought he was going to be Trump, and people, it just didn't have the same effect. And
not in British politics. Yeah. No, it doesn't work in British politics. But yeah, he did end up getting himself kicked off a bunch of places. But yeah, I would say that he pretty much espouses a viewpoint that was normal in Britain 20 years ago. He was a normal guy in Britain 20 years ago, and the British society has changed a whole lot in his lifetime. And anyway, he put out this list of movies that movies that Zoomers need to see in order to be normal. And I guess Zoomer is a Generation Z. Is that
Gen Z? I don't know it. I don't exactly know what age category it is, but it's the younger people.
Yes, the younger people. I know it's like people in their probably in their younger in their early 20s. I think.
I'm going to say, just for the sake of argument, let's say 30 and down to 14?
Sure.
15 to 30. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Am I doing really dumb math there? Leave me alone, folks.
I'm sorry. I'm signing into our
Yeah, we would be.
Xer
I think
account.
we're millennials.
Yeah, we're elder millennials. We are zennials.
X's.
So here, the Iron Mountain Hour. Everybody go follow us at Iron Mountain HR, at Iron Mountain HR on Twitter. We're going to hopefully be expanding the show up there. I did get us a premium account, so I think there's a lot of tools you can do with that, but I wasn't looking on the PC. I was looking on the Android app. So I think we have a lot more tools for actually streaming the show and posting video content there.
I've never been on Twitter.
Well, it is.
I'll take that back. I logged in once or twice, but I don't know. The site that I've slept on the most has somehow become huge.
Well, Twitter is, as we kind of got into a little bit. I always like the name Twitter for it because the idea was it was like journalists and people who were into stuff like that, like sharing little tidbits, like a little bird told me this, and then they were like sharing this information around. But then we found out like that there was a journo list of approved journalists that the White House was giving talking points to, and that was working with to craft all these stories, and so the Twitter kind of lost that. It wasn't that anymore exactly, but it was still more of a news-oriented social media. And I'm trying to find our daggone account here. Here we go. Hey, we're up to 12 followers now on Twitter. So put that on there so we'd be able to figure out how to stream later. Let's find Sargon of Akkad's tweet here. There we go. All right.
Carl Benjamin, that was it. I was going to say, I was trying to think of what his name was, but yeah, it's Carl Benjamin.
Yeah, so Carl Benjamin here, he makes this list of movies that Zoomers must watch in order to be normal.
Wow.
Well, I think it's because a lot of if you watch movies today, they're trying to program you with a certain worldview. Okay. As we just talked about, even with something like Mad Max Fury Road, which is a film that I enjoyed a lot, but you also have, a lot of kind of feminist ideas in there that are not exactly subtle. And then you do have, but in these movies too, had kind of, they were programming you a certain way too, but I would argue that they were programming you to be more of to be inspired by something heroic, to be inspired by something that has some value and some lasting meaning. And I think that's what maybe Carl Sargon of Akkad is going for here with his list. And not only that, but when you watch all this programming and watch all these movies and you think that the world is a certain way, that kind of shapes how it shapes your actions. I know a lot of us were shaped by the way we viewed the world from movies, even when we were a kid too. And that's not to say that these movies were like the real world or anything.
Normal. He wants me to watch The Princess Bride?
Yes.
Why? Why will watching The Princess Bride make me normal?
I would gather because it's because of the classic heroic story arc and the interplay between the child and his old grandfather and...
Spoiler alert. I've seen all these. But if I'm really going to be heart of hearts, be true to myself here, I actually think we shouldn't watch movies.
Okay.
I think they're all programming. I think we should cut all of that. I even think all of my favorite stuff is probably corrupt down to the marrow, and the only reason I like it is because my chemicals like it. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to have to try to really decide if these movies would make you normal or not.
I think it's because they were made in a time where the people who were creating the movies were actually giving the movies an idea. They were reaching out into... They were making the movies for normal people to feel them, the people of that time, to appreciate and value the things that are in the movie. Where nowadays they're kind of like they're pushing these ideals out that aren't really appealing to those people, hoping that those people will come around to view the world the way that these movies want them to, rather than, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well,
I think movies used to be made for the audiences. Now I think the movies are made basically, and the audiences are expected to conform to the movies. Is more of the way that the filmmakers seem to be making them.
I just wondered if it's. I'm trying to find a way to argue this without it just being argumentative for no reason, I guess. I would actually argue that some of this stuff would. I don't know. The individual doesn't need some of this stuff though. Like I feel like if the right individual got obsessed with the movie like They Live, they would just become so paranoid they couldn't function correctly.
I think. I mean, I could see that, yeah, and you could go crazy if you took any of these movies too seriously. I mean,
yeah.
But
The Matrix.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that one. I remember watching that one shortly after it came out on taking hallucinogenic mushrooms, and you know, it totally flipped my world upside down. Of course, I didn't watch it over and over again and base my life about it, but. These are pretty profound things in some of these movies, especially The Matrix and Fight Club, and even The Thing. The idea of, you know, the paranoia and you know, always having to look out behind your back and never know who's going to stab you in the back. Yeah, the other. But I think one thing all these movies have in common is they're what you'd call based. They're based in a world where there's good and bad, and there's heroism, and there's something worth fighting for, and they are based in a world where people actually act like people who have not been caught up in, you know, basically political programming and what would you call it? Brought into the Borg. What do they call it? Assimilated. Yeah, that's it. It's like all the movies now are kind of assumed that you've already assimilated, and I think these movies, something like this, they're, like I said, they're based to appeal to real people who lived in the world before the internet took everything over. And one of the things I noticed in you know, to bring up Mad Max Fury Road again, is, you know, they always, when those guys do something that they think is heroic, they say, witness me, and they'll have everybody like yell for them and something. It's almost like they're doing their social media thing where they get their likes, you know, and everybody, you know, gives them their like, and before they do something, you know, heroic or whatever. But they also talk about in that movie how, you know, they see a satellite go by and they're like, that was, you know, it brought shows to people, and, you know, everybody had their own show, you know, when the world was, before the world fell and stuff. So I think they're hinting at something like that, you know, that the need for attention, the constant need for ego stroking and recognition and stuff, but that's something as old as time itself too. Yeah. That's the reason that it's so effective with social media.
I would say, I'll use a movie since we're doing movies. I recently watched the movie Hook with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen that since I was probably a teenager or younger. But I did find it a pretty interesting concept when you watch the movie, that there was a lot of hidden stuff in there about how Robin Williams, you know, he was, you know, Peter Pan needing to grow up, and Neverland, you know, it makes you forget. And there's a lot of like hidden trauma meanings behind it, about how trauma keeps people from growing up. And I really feel like that's what's going on with a lot of people today, is they didn't grow up with their parents necessarily. They had parents around them, but they grew up with the internet. The internet taught you everything. And I think we're all starved for human interaction, and we're going through like the stages of our maturity like really late. I feel like that's what's causing people to act out so crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think there's that, and I think it's also, I think there are people who want people to act out so crazy. You know, there's the whole order ab chaos thing, where the order out of chaos, where societal breakdown gives opportunity to some people to take the reins of that society, And like we saw a good example of that is, the crack epidemic in the 80s and 90s that basically destroyed a lot of particularly urban neighborhoods intentionally. I mean, it was later found out that not only was the U.S. government involved in starting this up, Freeway Rick Ross kind of spilled the beans on that, as far as the CIA and other government organizations bringing drugs in. And not only that, they were dropping off cases of guns on the streets. There was where there'd be certain neighborhoods they'd go in and they'd just find a big old pallet of guns and then just dropped off there. So there's definitely been an effort to sow discontent in communities, and with that discontent comes new legislation, the new government authority, and new agencies, and new funding, and new opportunities for people to basically skim off the top. And like I talked about, I don't know if y'all saw the video I did on Oliver Anthony, but once they set up these government programs, it's not just the poor. The poor don't only get a portion of the money. Most of that money ends up going into food stamp program. It goes into the hands of big food, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, Smithfield, big agriculture. Those guys all get that money. It's not like the other poor people get to eat, but that's not why there's a food stamp system. It's for the big guys. It's for the people who make that money on the end. The public housing apartments are not for the people who live in the public housing apartments. They're for the people who own the companies that run the public housing apartments. So again, I think it's kind of the same way. But what movies do you think out there in the chat? What movies would you add to this list of movies that Zoomers need to see to be normal? Now, I'm going to go Big Trouble in Little China.
I have a problem with that normal. I guess it's Sargon of Akkad too, because he's not normal. He's more of a gamer type.
Well, but the thing is, it shouldn't even be normal. It is like a person who was born in the real world before the digital world, before everything you did was based on what you saw on the internet. Everything that you did was based on what you saw around you.
Yeah, but
and in the movie theater.
We're doing the same thing that we accuse the Amish. Like I don't have a problem with the Amish, but I always have this running gag I pick on them with, where it's like, why that point in time? Well, it's like. But over the years, I've started to figure out the reason they probably have an issue with electricity is that they probably thought it would make you weaker as a man.
Yeah.
But like I feel like that's what we're doing with the internet. Like the internet came along and we're blaming the internet for all of our brainwashing. But now we're suddenly giving Hollywood a pass by saying you need to watch these Hollywood movies to be normal, when Hollywood's what fucked everybody up to begin with. So it's like we just need to stop consuming what wicked people are producing for us to consume. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it's not that hard to recognize what's wicked if you just do a little examination.
I would agree half-heartedly.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, because I think there's something to the idea that these movies exhibited the best of humanity, and that these were stories that were classic stories told in a then modern age of the 70s and 80s, the hero's journey arc, and then kind of turning that on its head with something like Ripley, and kind of have the female reverse version of that, and you'd have But the idea was there's something good, there's something worth fighting for. Other people are worth fighting for. Not this kind of nihilistic viewpoint. I know there was starting to get some of that in movies in the 70s and 80s, but they kind of toyed with it. It wasn't as. It's almost like the old movies these days, especially when you get into stuff like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mm-hmm. It kind of has a nihilistic bent to it, like all this is like none of it really matters anyway, almost kind of thing, and that it can all just be, rewritten in another time with another character, and there's all these different universes, and nothing really matters anyway. I kind of get that view from a lot of modern cinema that, it used to be when you had an anti-hero movie. you could understand the anti-hero, and yeah, you kind of rooted for him even though he's a bad guy, but then it became like the anti-hero became the hero all the time. And it's like, the anti-hero is not supposed to be the norm. You know, it's...
Yeah, the day Deadpool became a mainstream hero was a bad day, because it's like, he's not a hero. You see what I'm saying? It's like, that's what we're all, including Taylor Swift, all wants to be the anti-hero now. The person who could be the hero but chooses not to. That's called a felony in some states. That's called a Good Samaritan law. You're not supposed to be an anti-hero, people. You just, if you don't want to be a hero, just don't be a hero, but don't be an anti-hero. It's called an asshole in reality. Like, an anti-villain like Thanos is better than that.
Yeah.
You know, the person that, well, no. Is that right? The person that could be the villain but decides not to. That's not Thanos. He decided to kill half the people in the world. That's a villain.
He did
Never mind.
decide to be a villain.
I don't have a good example for that one. But I'm just saying it's not a good state of mind when most of the people, even if they're doing it recreationally, are deciding that anti-heroism is a good thing. Because
I think that you know, it has that edge to it that, you know, kind of edgy became the thing there for a long time, and then kind of that was Deadpool. That was about the same time that, you know, being edgelording became really popular, and
probably still is. It's just we're changing what is edgy, I suppose.
I think it's funny though. I forget, somebody, maybe Sam Tripoli, was talking about how it was a comedian.
You could probably get on his show.
Yeah, I
could probably pick a fight with him and we could get on there.
Well, I thought about getting up with that guy. But one of the things he was talking about is like even the edgelords now, because he's a comedian. He's like, even edgelord comedians, he's like, you know, there's certain things they won't touch. Like they won't touch a black joke or a gay joke. You know, they're supposed to be so edgy, but they'll do some, I don't even want to say it on YouTube, but jokes about really any inappropriate things, and they're accepted for that, but you know, they're afraid to do, you know, a racial joke or, you know, a gay joke, and they're pretending to be edgy, but they're really just being edgy with what they're, you know, what they can do without, you know, really making anybody upset. And then you got guys like they're like Owen Benjamin, who's somehow beyond all odds been a white guy making all kinds of racial jokes and saying the N-word, and got banned from a lot of places, but he's still selling out shows and has kind of made a parallel, made the underground comedy scene. Yeah, he does all over the place, and he's really popular, including amongst black people. But they tried to cancel him because he, you know, the mainstream culture tried to cancel him because he basically started using, not in a racist way, but doing racial jokes like people used to do in the 80s and 90s, and then he started using the N-word in his jokes. As part of his joke.
Well, the thing about him canceled was that like he started going after the trans people, but like
yeah, I think that's what ultimately did it.
My opinion, and Owen, we can talk about it if you want to. I think he got canceled on purpose because like getting canceled was like a mark of.
You think he wanted to be the anti-hero?
I think he wanted to get canceled because it was helping other people's careers. Right. Like Jordan Peterson got canceled. I can't remember who else got canceled at that point in time, but it was. Obviously, every time somebody got canceled, it would boost their core career, even if they weren't mainstream. And at that point in time, Owen Benjamin, I think he had been on Joe Rogan and stuff like that, so he had some sort of success. He had some success at that point in time.
Pretty good success if you're on Joe Rogan.
But I really felt like at first, it kind of seemed like he got canceled on purpose. But if you watch that one episode of Rogan that he was on, he's so hung up on like Twitter interactions, and he's so hung up on just the trans issues in general. It made him look nuts.
Right.
It's like, dude, do you wake up every day and think about trans people? Like,
I guess if you started saying something about it and then they started, you know, warring with you online, you could consume your existence pretty quickly. But especially on Twitter, and you know, that's it's a pretty active political battlefield. So
yeah, I guess. But
long story short, normal people, that sounds crazy.
Yeah. Well, long story short is this: Sam Tripoli or Owen Benjamin or Carl Benjamin. A lot of Benjamins in there.
I don't know of any other Tripolis.
I'll fight any of you, and that means in the ring or over a Zoom call.
And Sam Hyde, you too.
I would do that too. Sam Hyde would kind of scare me.
He's coming to your house in real life.
But yeah, I would fight Sam Hyde too in a boxing ring or on a Zoom call.
Yes, anytime. Gas the Geese. And y'all can gas the geese too. Jump in that chat and let us know what you think. What movies should Zoomers watch to be normal? So I'm gonna throw one in.
Give a real one. I'll try to give a real thought one too.
I'm gonna give a real one. I'm gonna give you Tremors.
To be normal?
Yes.
Okay.
Because Tremors takes you back to when I watched Tremors. I was probably in, I don't know, second or third grade, something like that. I was pretty young when I saw it. Watched it at a friend's house, and it was one of those films that where you see American people in a small town out in the West that acting like real normal people, the way normal people act with one another, and there's showing that being prepared is a good thing. Like, this guy might seem crazy because he's got his weapons and stuff, but it's actually a good thing to be able to defend yourself. Going after the girl and saving the day is worth doing, and this kind of it's the interactions between Earl and Val are how people used to be, how people still are, but they're not portrayed in movies that way anymore, and that's one of the reasons I picked that one.
Other than the fact that you believe that worm creatures are real.
Yes.
That Elon Musk is hunting them.
He might be. It's not, but it's not even about
big fat worms.
It's not even about, because there's things on there like I would say Gladiator.
Okay. Why Gladiator?
Well, Gladiator is the story, of the slave rebellion. In order, coming the emperor and the whole man who would be king story. Mm-hmm. It's a different telling of that. It's a classic story that is based on, in what do you call it? Ineffable. I don't know. Human traits that are, innate in us. Innate human traits.
Okay.
The whole idea of sacrificing yourself for what you believe in, for the greater good, to grow something, and then not becoming trapped down in, not becoming what you sought to destroy. This kind of thing. I feel like there's a lot of, it's one of those things that's hard to put into words, because it's something that's kind of all the way back to the stories that we told thousands of years ago. They all kind of have these qualities, and so did the stories of these movies in the 70s and 80s and 90s. These were kind of, like I've said on movies before, or on this show before, there's probably only like 18 or 20 different stories, and they get retold in different ways, with different twists, but they're basically the same stories. And there's a reason that those stories are the ones that kind of people tend to go to. An example I gave of it is, look at something like Talladega Nights. Look at any sports comedy, kind of hero's journey story, where there's Major League.
Basically, Braveheart's real similar to Gladiator. Yeah,
Braveheart and Gladiator are basically the same story. The Patriots, a really similar story. Not quite, but it's different events, but it's very similar. It's a very similar film. But something like Talladega Nights is the same movie exactly as Major League, as Unnecessary Roughness. It's the same movie as Walk the Line. It's the same movie as Semi-Pro, as Anchorman. They're all the same movie. They're just different settings and different events, but it's the same story taking place over and over again. And you see that in, like I said, there's the Man Who Would Be King story, and the Road to El Dorado.
So with those
Disney
patterns, I would have to say, using the patterns that you've brought up, that I'm sure you've seen the dude from The Blind Side has been in the news recently, where he's wanting to end his conservatorship from his parents.
I don't know who he is.
Okay, he's a Major League football player. They made the movie The Blind Side about him. You know the movie?
No, I don't.
Okay, brief synopsis. It was a pretty popular movie. Movie was, rich white couple adopt an inner city kid who's built like a tank. They get him through college.
One with Sandra Bullock.
He becomes an NFL player, and for some reason, after all these years, he's just now getting out of his conservatorship. Which, yeah, that'd be a good idea probably. But using the logic that we have put before us, and now that we have seen Brittany doing the knife dance in her kitchen, we might not want to end that fella's conservatorship. He might become a real wild man, and he's big enough to do some damage. Or is Brittany just distracting us again with her?
I did see her dancing with the knives, and then a few months ago, I saw her showing her boobs and getting naked on Instagram.
Well, we freed Brittany, everybody.
Yeah, and Brittany freed the dipple.
Well, she was crazy. She was like doing stuff like it before they freed her, though.
Was
It's
she?
not like, well, she's like beating people's cars with a golf club, and getting tattoos and shaving her head. Or was that pre-conservatorship?
I don't know. I think that was pre-conservatorship, but
Never mind.
I think she went shaved her head and went crazy in about what 2008, something like that, or was it before that?
No, I think that was around the same time. 'Cause it was the same night she got like a lip tattooed on her hand or something like that. The same night.
Well, that was right around the time of the troop surge, wasn't it?
I think so. That's the theory that every time they're doing something military, Brittany does something crazy.
Nope.
Well, she's dancing with knives. What are they doing?
I know shit. What is coming now? And what would Dolly do? I sent Tim a picture of a.
That's cringe, folks.
Don't you see those everywhere? What would
like
Dolly
that.
do? I don't either, man. I mean,
I still like the idolization. That's
I'm just saying, if you were a Christian, that seems like a pretty blasphemous thing to say.
yeah, most people that do that aren't
based on-
Christians, though. They have like the super Dolly fans typically aren't, though.
Is that right? Oh yeah, a lot of them
Yeah.
are into her because she was one of the early people to basically say not that a whore on the street corner she thought she was beautiful and
Yeah.
that I don't know, she was
admit
really
that she got her style from drag.
yeah
and-
she was really progressive as far as her social lifestyle and stuff like that. So
I don't if I ever give like people a hard time on like a stream or something like that, I usually don't have a problem with the celebrity, like the singer or the actor or something. It's usually I don't like it when a fan base takes someone and puts them in a position they don't belong in.
yeah,
Like, and she's really been put into a sainthood position,
yeah.
and that's dumb, first of all. But I just don't like this view that she's some kind of a saintly communist when she's, in fact, a capitalist. A very good one. A very, very successful capitalist. But somehow, because she gave away free books, saying 9 to 5 and more drag clothes, she's a saint. And I'm just saying that maybe those things aren't true. I'm just saying it's a little absurd that we did that.
Yeah. Well, I'd say Steel Magnolias is a good movie to watch for Zoomers to be normal.
Okay. I'm trying to remember the plot of Steel Magnolias now.
I don't remember it either.
I remember-
No, wait, Fried Green Tomatoes. That's what I was thinking of. Not Steel Magnolias.
Secrets in the Sauce.
Yeah, but there's some good, even
I feel
even
like they misportrayed that movie. Like, that came up in some kind of a feed suggestion here recently, and Ashley was looking at it, and she was like, I don't think I've seen that one. I'm having a hard time remembering that one. And then when she read the description out loud, it sounded like they fluffed it up. Like, the description of the movie made it sound like the two women that were helping each other were in like some kind of a quasi-sexual relationship, and it never really came across that way to me. It came across to me as they were like just super best friends that were wanting to take care of each other because they both had the shit kicked out of each other.
Yeah.
But then again, I haven't seen that movie probably since I was 10, so maybe they were carpet cracking it
Well,
online.
honestly, I think a lot of maybe female and female relationships may end up that way. That I'm sure there's plenty where there is sexual attraction, but there's also I think some where I feel like both have been abused or beaten down in heterosexual relationships, and they kind of came together on. And I've known a couple of couples who have gone together on that basis, and it's like they're not really necessarily like sexually active, but they're still,
I guess I have a problem with like us going back and trying to like retcon people's just for what they were. Like, it's not good enough that these people couldn't have been great friends that they would murder for each other. They have to also have had sex.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why we're obsessed with sex on a level that's getting absurd.
Yeah, you're right.
To where everybody has to have had sex with somebody, or the story's not worth the time anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's. I mean it is. A love story is always it's kind of something that they even shoehorn into movies a lot of times. Like, oh well, we don't have a love story here.
Well, Natural Born
add a
Killers
love-
has a great love story in it.
And that's another movie that Zoomers need to watch
Should they? I
in
don't
order to
know.
be normal. But because I don't think they're that. Well, I don't know. I think a lot of kids our age even were like they looked at Mickey and Mallory as heroes. And really, that movie was. I guess maybe that movie, if you watch it and don't really see what it's going for, it could have the opposite effect. But I think that it was basically calling out the 24-hour news cycle and kind of the way that news and politics and media were kind of all working together to program the society, and they were making violence and sensationalism kind of the what guided society, I guess. And it's kind of ironic that probably a lot of the people who watched that movie it totally missed that point. So that's why I said it could be a good one for Zoomers to learn, and it could be a good one for that would be easy to misinterpret.
So Fight Club was on that list, and
I think that's a good one.
I think that would probably be
It's
almost
kind of the same way.
I mean, I think that would probably be misinterpreted almost every time.
Yep, I think it's kind of the same way. And that's what I was saying is, like, you might misinterpret Fight Club to say, oh, well, let's just burn it all down.
Now with the system, we need to start over.
Yeah, and I don't really feel like that was what it was saying at all. And the same thing with, what was the movie we were just talking about?
Before Fight Club?
Yeah. Just 2 seconds ago.
I don't remember.
Oh yeah, Natural Born Killers.
Natural Born Killers, yeah.
Yeah, so like it sets Mickey and Mallory as the heroes, basically as the protagonists in the film, but it's not really saying that they're good guys. But the film does make you want to root for them, and I think maybe a lot of people miss the point of it because of that. Because you do want to root for them. A film's not much very enjoyable to watch if you're not really rooting either for or against somebody pretty hard in it. What else does he have on the list here? He's got Predator and Predator 2. I don't really know about Predator 2.
I don't understand Predator. I'm trying to be to function within the confines of just discussing the movies, because all I'm wanting to do is look at this and go, yeah, why would this? You don't need to watch this, That's all. It's like you don't need to watch this, so why? But I guess the one I'm not understanding necessarily might be Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Other than just because it's enjoyable.
Well, no, I mean it is, but it also I think it showed kind of real kids in the 80s. I think that maybe
did it, because that's a pretty weird situation with Marty and the professor, like a kid that just hangs out with a nuclear physicist.
I don't think
that everybody in town kind of thinks is a weirdo.
Yeah. Well, I don't think necessarily that wasn't exactly what I was referring to, but yeah, I just mean the school scenes, and I would add something like one of those Breakfast Club or 16 Candles or something like that. Ferris Bueller, one of those kind of comedic melodramas of the 80s. What's that guy's name that does all those movies?
I don't know. I can't remember his name. I know his face. Like, are any of those teen movies good for? Like, are they social commentary, or because it seems like what we did for a while is we made movies about high school, and we caricatured the dynamic with the jock and the nerd and the cheerleader and all this stuff. And then what we started doing was we started putting in this little nerd character, a loser, who eventually becomes the cool guy at the end of it. And now we live in Big Bang world where the cool person is just default the nerd.
Yeah.
And if you're a big old muscle dude, you're toxic. So once again, maybe we should turn the TV off.
Well, I would put Conan the Barbarian in the list there. Also,
which one?
The original one. And I was going to say, because the 2012 version, I hadn't avoided watching until recently, and I watched it and I noticed. I didn't hate the movie while I was watching it, but when it was over, I was kind of like, this didn't feel like a Conan movie. And then I got to thinking about all the reasons that it didn't feel like a Conan movie and why the original was so much better. And I was like, wait a minute, this movie kind of sucked. Jason Momoa's Conan, right off the bat, I think this is done pretty intentionally. He's more of a feminine has more of a pretty face. You know, he's still got the big muscles and stuff, but
I'm already out.
he's
Barbarian. He's supposed to be awful.
yeah, and he's like Conan Arnold had the chiseled jawline, and they really accentuated that and made his cheekbones look fucking
Covered in Dan Edelman's
yeah,
skin.
yeah, and Jason Momoa was also a Mary Sue. Yeah, he couldn't save his father, but when he was like 12 years old, he kills a bunch of freaking guys out in the woods that are, you know, trying to trap him and his friends, and he just like kills everybody that he meets the whole movie. And
He has no character arc.
he's
What do they call that?
it's Mary Sue.
Is it Mary Sue?
Yeah,
Why is that?
everything goes his way, and he never has any real failures that he has to struggle through or learn any lessons to get better. He just gets better. He just gets past.
What's the girl from Star Wars? The girl from the new Star Wars, because that's the one that.
Oh yeah, Daisy Ridley, Ray.
Ray.
Yeah, she's a Mary Sue.
That's like
Yeah.
the poster child for why people that like. She could have been a likable character, but they literally wrote her apart. That her character you couldn't like.
Yeah, I mean, who relates to a perfect character?
The person that just gets it right every single time.
Yeah, and you know, we need somebody that we can relate to that fucks up all the time like we do, and manages to actually learn from it and improve themselves and rise above, you know, to achieve the task at hand. So that's what we want to see in a realistic character arc. We don't, and that was one of the main reasons that the Conan kind of failed for me.
Most relatable character out of Star Wars is the one they never show you, which is the Jedi who, from day one, when they give him a lightsaber, takes his eye out. From day one, his eyeball gets taken out day one. That's my Jedi. That's one I have to relate to, because otherwise I'm left with Jar Jar Binks. Or a dead stormtrooper who didn't make it past the first battle.
Well, I think there's a lot of other movies you could add to this list, but I do think it's a pretty good list. I think that you would call those based movies.
So if I watched all those movies, I would finally be normal.
You've watched all those movies,
And I'm not normal, so he's wrong.
well, but you are normal too, though. Even though you are abnormal, you live in the real world, and
I do not, though.
yeah, you do that. You recognize, you may not live in the real world, but you recognize the real world, and you recognize whether you live in it or not, whether you stay in your basement and avoid it or not.
Well, I'm saying, like,
there's a real world out there that.
Carl's saying, like, to be normal is like to be a part of the hive.
No, that's not what he's saying.
Well, what's he saying then? To be.
He's saying the part of that. He's saying that the hive is gone away from these values in these movies. The things that make these movies so great this was the last generation of films where humanity was expressed realistically in film.
No movies.
And since then, film has been rather than portraying humanity realistically, film has portrayed humanity in the way that the film wants the humanity.
So you're saying realistically? See, I was taking it from like this movie's gonna make you a better person or something.
No. The values in this film, that the setting, the feeling of this film is set in the real world that's based in culture that was created by real human beings that are based on the way that human beings actually act.
Well, everything's discredited except for documentaries at that point. I think no films, nothing, and we just keep Andy Griffith.
Well, Andy Griffith would fall into that too. Because it's like I said, it's like how people should treat one another is in these films. I mean, yeah, but when somebody acts inappropriately, the way that you shouldn't interact with somebody, that's recognized by the film, and it comes into account later. It comes into play later. You know, it's not like, you know, what some of these films. A lot of them, I can't think of one off there. Maybe Wonder Woman. Or not Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel.
What are you trying to portray? Like,
like Captain Marvel, where like this woman is just kind of like a snide, mean woman. The whole, you know, and who's like, oh well, she's in charge now, so she can do whatever she wants. And there's nothing relatable about her. The first thing she does is like rob a guy, and it's okay because, you know, he's a man and he must be an asshole. And well, she's got the power now, so. and there's kind of a lot of that in a lot of these films that are, and I didn't think that Mad Max Fury Road did that, which is
Mad Max Fury Road is not as good as a movie is a feminist manifesto.
It is. I'm not saying it isn't, because it definitely has some. What do you call it? Margaret
should be
Atwood.
called Men Suck. That should be the name of the movie.
What was that movie, or that Margaret Atwood film? They made a movie about The Handmaid's Tale. So it was a lot like The Handmaid's Tale.
It's so goofy. I'm sorry, guys.
Except
it's so goofy.
What was it?
Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale.
So
Yeah.
goofy.
I was gonna say it had a lot of the same themes in The Handmaid's Tale, but it made them actually where men could probably actually watch it, and I appreciated it for what it was. But I also think it's kind of one of the last films of a kind like that, and I do think they are starting to maybe come back just a little bit, because
I think ebb and flows. People do that again.
Yeah, I think so. I think Hollywood has gone a little bit too far, and they're going to have to come back, or there won't be Hollywood anymore. So,
well, I can predict the future. I'm good at this, for trends especially, and I can tell you either in 2024, 25, 26 probably, we were subjugated, I would say that, to sit through boy bands and all these trends and stuff, right? And then movies started, right? And you had your Titanic was a big one. And then we had to sit through that awful Twilight saga that they stretched out for so long. But you know what's coming next? Because everybody wanted to fuck vampires for a while, right? It's fairies. It's going to be fairies next. Women out there are reading fairy porn, y'all. That's what they're reading, and it's going to come out one of these days. And everybody, like, I don't know where all your women are going to be fantasizing about fairy.
So what you're saying is I need to put some pixie dust on my wiener.
I guess so. Put you some wings on your back and hope your wife's been reading Sarah J. Maas.
There we go.
I'll just tell you that's what the next trend's going to be.
Well, let's move on to the next thing here. So, a hard segue into 50 years of research at the University of Virginia here, the School of Medicine Division of Perceptual Studies. Did you ever know that was a thing?
No.
I didn't either. Well, over the past 50 years of active research, they have collected 2,500 cases, most of which were outside the United States, where they recorded cases of people reporting previous lives, and that they were actually able to find that the only way they can't find any explanation for how these people know the things that they know. They were actually able to pinpoint the areas that they lived, even the families in some cases that they lived with, and they described who they actually were. And in a lot of these cases, there were no, that was one of the biggest things in the studies that I read was for example, there was one of a woman who was, suddenly she would lived in India, right? And suddenly she had a possession, as they called it, and she was possessed by a woman with a different name who spoke Bengali and who described herself as a 22-year-old woman who had never had any children, and she had died she didn't know she had died. The last thing she remembered was when she was 22 years old, she had been bit on the toe by a snake and went unconscious. And she would come out into this woman, and most of the time that they spent in this study was trying to figure out where she would have had an opportunity to learn Bengali, without, and just suddenly be able to speak it fluently. So they actually had her speak Bengali to 5 different people, and that were native Bengali speakers, and they all said that she spoke like a native Bengali. The only training that she had ever had was in her high school class, but it was taught by somebody who didn't know how to speak Bengali correctly, and she never actually learned, how to speak it. She learned a few words and phrases, and he was teaching her the incorrect pronunciation. He was basing it phonetically on the language that they spoke there in India. I think it was like Sumatra or something. He was basing the pronunciation of the words on that, so she was taught to say it incorrectly. But when she was possessed by this other person, she would speak perfect Bengali with the Bengali pronunciation. So most of the time that they spent on the study was trying to figure out where in the world could she have learned Bengali, and they couldn't figure it out. So that's the way a lot of these things read too. And then there was a case of, let's find this one real quick. There was a case of. Let's go to the Reader's Digest one because.
I know there's a kid who had a bunch of memories of being in a plane.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to go to next.
Or something like that. And
that was the one I was going to next. Let me find that real quick. Here we go. It was the TV producers. Let's see. James Leninger, a 4-year-old Louisiana boy who believes he was once a World War II pilot who had been shot down over Iwo Jima. Bruce and Andrea Leninger first realized that James had these memories when he was 2 and woke up from a nightmare yelling, "Airplane crash! Plane on fire! Little man can't get out!" He also knew details about World War II aircraft that it would seem impossible for a toddler to know. For instance, when Andrea referred to an object on the bottom of a toy plane as a bomb, James corrected her by saying it was a drop tank. Another time, he and his parents were watching a History Channel documentary, and the narrator called a Japanese plane a Zero. James insisted that it was a Tony. In both cases, he was right. The boy said he had been named James in his previous life also, and that he'd flown off a ship called the Natoma. The Leningers discovered a World War II aircraft carrier called the USS Natoma Bay. In its squadron was a pilot named James Houston who had been killed in action over the Pacific. James talked incessantly about the plane crashing, and he was disturbed by nightmares a few times a week. His desperate mother contacted past life therapist Carol Bowman for help. Bowman told Andrea not to dismiss what James was saying and assured him that whatever happened had occurred in another life and body, and he was safe now. And she followed his advice, and his dreams diminished. And they say eventually that most of these actually go away. They start right after the child learns to talk, like 2 to 3 years old. And almost a loud notifications there. But they
there's a Greek god, and I don't remember which one it is, whose sole job was to make people forget their past life before they transitioned into the next one. I'm trying to think. I think it was her. I'm pretty sure she ruled over like a fountain. And like, so I think it's funny, like ancient religions, most of them really hint at reincarnation. Even Orthodox Christianity doesn't even put it out of the realm of possibility that, like, you know, that there's like some sort of a transition. And I just thought when you started talking about the kid remembering everything, just had the idea that maybe he skipped that step. So maybe some people don't. Maybe some people get attached and they want to remember.
Yeah, maybe. And they say that's what causes ghosts too, right? Is hanging on to the physical or whatever.
Maybe.
Trying to hang on to the life that you have instead of letting go of it and moving on to the next one. What was the ancient Greek goddess forgetting past life?
Marshall, that should do it. Leith, there you go.
Leith is a nymph or spirit in Greek mythology. It is associated with the underworld and river of the same name. Forgetfulness and oblivion is said to have the power to make people forget their troubles or erase their memories. And we talked about in the Soul Trap episode too. There were people who said like that basically we've been engineered into something, and that white light at the end of the tunnel is the masters over us tricking us into going back into the simulation again.
Canal.
Yeah, tricking us back into going into. So they say to avoid the white light. But I tend to think that most of the religions have. I mean, really, even Buddhists and even Christianity. I think, like you said, Orthodox Christianity has a kind of way of. It seems like the most popular belief about reincarnation is that this world is basically a place to kind of purify one's soul and learn to live basically in the teachings of Buddha or Jesus or whatever deity is at the head of it. But it's ultimately like, oh well, you didn't live up to that this time, so you try again, and come back through and improve yourself and learn to love and let go of grudges and kind of all the things that these ancient religions tell us to do, and whether it's Jesus or Osiris or they all kind of Dolly Parton. They all kind of have their own way of spreading that message, but again, the message is kind of the same, and the symbolism in many cases is very similar. whether it's the purifying fire burning away the sin or the rising sun of God. It's kind of the same idea, just for different cultures at different times. And I guess leth is what's needed to late is who's needed to make you forget. And James must have skipped that. Let's see. I've got a couple other ones here though. Let's see. Now this was another interesting thing that they found in this study from the Department of Psychiatric Medicine and at University of Virginia. And this was back in 1993. That in these studies where they did 210 case studies of children who had past life experiences, and they were between 2 and 3 up to 5 and 7, and is where they started and stopped. And they found that 35% of these children in these cases had a birthmark where they remembered basically being killed in their last life. So they would, have, they remembered it, but they would, these were cases where, these 210 cases where they found that these children accurately described a time and place that they would have no business, being able to describe, and maybe even they were able to track down a real person who this child described being. And in 35% of these cases, they found that there was a birthmark on this child in the place where the person they said they were before was killed. So, to give you an example of this, we go down a little bit further here. They go into, kind of the some of the details there, but this is a man who said he was he was a youth who was as a child, he said he remembered the life of a man, Maharam, who was killed with a shotgun fired at close range. And they found the man Maharam that he claimed that he was, and found that man was killed with a shotgun. Meanwhile, this child had this birthmark on his chest. So it's pretty wild. But as you keep going down, this guy Stevenson, this is from Maharam's autopsy. This is where the shotgun pellets went in.
So really what we should do...
This is the child's birthmark.
If this is true, what we should do is every time someone who is just a horrible person, like if you catch a serial killer or a dictator or something like that, shouldn't you kill them in such a very obvious way?
Yeah, so
that
we
they
can
come back with
them.
Crazy birthmarks, like literally cut them down like with a like a weird chicken wire pattern. That way, when they're born, they have a chicken wire pattern on them or something.
That sounds like a plan. This was a Thai man who, as a child, he remembered the life of his paternal uncle. Mm-hmm. And described his life, and his uncle was killed by a crushing blow to the back of the head, and he has this big scar on the back of his head. And here's a congenital malformation of the nail on the right toe of a subject.
Toe trauma.
Well, his uncle also suffered a chronic ulcer of that toe, so this is the same guy. Yeah, so his uncle had a chronic ulcer on his toe. He was when he was 2 or 3 years old, said he remembered being his uncle, didn't ever know his uncle, described being his own uncle. And then he's got these birthmarks where his uncle had a ulcer on his toe and was killed by a blow to the back of the head. So that's pretty crazy. Let's go down here. This boy, you can't really see this one, but this boy has a birthmark on his head, and it corresponds to the bullet wound of the person who he described being in a previous life when they were able to check the records, and they found out this person died of this. And the boy described remembering and a lot of these things, a lot of these times, these people may not know their previous name, but in some cases they do. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of times they are able to describe the city they lived in, the street they lived on, relatives, things like this. So they're still able to determine, okay, this person is actually describing that they were a real person who existed. How can we figure out how this is? But there's lots of other, this is a part of a long paper here. And this one
guy died of ear trauma.
Looks like he said he remembered he was the life of a man who was fatally wounded on the right side of the head by a shotgun discharged at close range. So, not that he remembered being killed by a shotgun, but that he described the life of a person, and then they found this person, and then ends up matching him. And then this guy in England or India, this boy, remembered putting his hands into a fodder chopping machine when he was in his previous life, and then born without fingers. But that would kind of make you wonder, did he just, since he didn't have fingers, he was like, damn, why don't I have fingers? Did I chop my, could have just had a dream about wondering why you didn't have no fingers. I ain't got no fingers. This woman was run over by a train in her previous life. But then again, I would say, I could see that you would, you could see imagining that, but the thing that's weird is they actually describe being that person who got run over, and then they found the person, and that somebody like that really existed. That's what just makes it the craziest thing. So I could say if it was just the fact that the kid, was born without a leg and then had a dream that her train got run over a leg, that wouldn't really mean a whole lot, except for the fact that she remembered being somebody who got her leg run over by a train, and the two are unrelated. So
these aren't freckles all over me then. I must have died by a million bees.
Well, actually, there is a pretty lengthy section in this paper where they talk about the difference between moles and birthmarks, and how that they didn't find moles to be that moles didn't really fall into this.
So that giant hole in my ass, perhaps I got shot there. Perhaps I took a bullet to the ass.
But yeah, there's this guy Stevenson. He did a lot of these different studies, and he was, people didn't want to look at his stuff, but when they actually did, when other scientists and researchers looked at his papers, they pretty much had to admit that, yes, he did these things correctly. He did them detached, and objective enough to our satisfaction that we believe that he, that in each of these cases, every, that these are legitimate, unexplained. This person is explaining, telling us about an actual event, an actual person. We don't know how it happened, but it merits further study. So, anyway, Ian Stevenson was the main guy who kind of started the whole putting all these things together, but the University of Virginia has been doing it at the Division of Perceptual Studies now for 50 years. And they've done, like I said, 2,500 different studies of children who remembered their past lives. So my younger brother, when I was a kid, he was probably 2 to 3 years old, and we were walking on my parents' property out in Blue Springs, and we were walking through the leaves out above our creek, and he just looks up at me and my brothers, and he says, "Yeah, this reminds me of where I used to walk when I was an old man." And we're like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I used to have a little place out in the woods, and I'd come out and walk." We're like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know, but I remember it very clearly that, he said, just the way he said it, "This reminds me of where I used to walk when I was an old man." And like I said, it was 2, 3 years old. It was definitely an honest statement from him, whatever it meant. So I've seen that in my own life, and they say actually that 5% or 6% of parents report that their children do say they remember being somebody else, or so, So that's not a small 1 out of 20. Over 1 out of 20.
And that's what the elites know. They figure out who they were, so they can figure out who they're going to be born back into.
Yeah.
Dalai Lama style.
Yes, and that was actually one of the other stories that they talked about. It was a famous one. Where's he at? This little guy here. The boy who fulfilled his past life's destiny, and he said he was a Lama who said he was going to be born in Seattle, and this guy was born in Seattle in 1991, and he was only 2 years old when he realized that he was actually the fourth reincarnation of the original Tibetan Lama, Deshung Rinpoche the first. The realization was accumulation of a number of signs that had been accumulating since the boy was before even born, and included the visions of his mother and her own Lama, as well as the words of the third reincarnation, who informed his acolytes in 1987, the year of his death, I will be born in Seattle. And apparently he left his family forever and went to the Buddha monastery. I don't know how they decided that this was actually the same guy, you know what I mean? Like, did the kid at 2 years old say he was, did he say, hey, I'm a Lama? Did he know already? Or did he just it was like that episode of King of the Hill where they come to town and lay the blanket of stuff down and we're like, we're looking for a Lama because he said he was going to be born in Seattle. It's kind of weird, like, oh, I'm going to be born in Seattle.
I really wanted to pick something in Seattle.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd like to live in Seattle.
I'm going to be born in Akron, Ohio.
I don't think about voluntarily pick Akron. In this day and age, you wouldn't voluntarily pick Seattle, but then it probably looked pretty cool.
Yeah, in 1991, Supersonics, Gary Payton. But anyway, there are a lot of cool cases of that. Then you can read more here. If you look at past life stories, there's all kinds of stuff out there. But the University of Virginia has a really good, they do stuff on near-death experiences, past life, reincarnation, all kinds of different stuff. Really cool. They have a department of parapsychology, and they also have a link on here if you're interested in a job in parapsychology. You can be like Egon Spangler and go work for the University of Virginia. Be much better use than gender studies in Pakistan. So, without further ado, I want to talk about the raids. Have you heard about this? Have you seen this? The raids in Virginia dispensaries?
I've heard about it. So it looks really similar to what they were doing in California.
So apparently,
when they first legalized out there.
Yeah, apparently the state authorities are going around and did search warrants in all these different legal, they're CBD dispensaries.
Some of them.
And some of them, I guess, are...
it looked like a real mixed bag. It looked like... Because some of those places look like Delta 8 stores that were selling what they should have been selling too.
Right. Well, that's possible too. They went into places like... what's it called? Grounded LLC, Good Vibes, Zarati Shop, and so they just did search warrants. They didn't arrest anybody, and they said it's part of an extensive ongoing criminal investigation into allegations of money laundering and operation of illegal narcotic distribution network. So a lot of people were complaining that they were saying, "Oh, well, these people they're exploiting loopholes," and what seems to be happening is they seem to be following the law. Which, it seems kind of silly that they would have delayed it anyway. They said it's legal, but you can't sell it legally, right? So it's legal to possess up to an ounce. But I guess if you're, selling it, you kind of have to possess over an ounce. I guess it's, either even if you're giving it away, I think that's the way a lot of these things do it, is they'll give it as a gift with other things that you purchase from them. But
what it looked like to me is what they was doing in California. When they first legalized it, they would just randomly show up to certain places, but they would never come back and actually execute.
But that was the feds, though, right?
Yeah, but this is the feds here too.
Oh, is it? I thought it was.
No, if you actually look,
the U.S. Postal Service.
It's
inspection.
all over. Okay. Yeah, it's all over the
DEA,
Virginia,
and state police. Okay.
And so like that right there was a big red flag for you. Not really red flag, just because everybody's like, oh, they're coming after all of them. It's like, I don't think
They're coming to get you, people.
It's like there's like 14 Zerati shops alone, and they only went for 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so it looks like to me, just my opinion, I think they wanted to tax them. I think because they did that in California all the time. They'd walk in, take all their money, all the stuff. But we got a warrant, and since they were in a legal gray zone anyway, it was actually just cheaper for them to buy new stock and just start selling again than it was for them to fight the system.
I'll be honest, it seems pretty damn silly though they've already decided they want to legalize it, and this is my opinion on it. They've already decided they want to legalize it. These you may say it's a loophole, but these people are even if they are giving away something that they're not supposed to sell with the purchase of another product, they're following the law. And even if it is, like, why did you even make it 3 years down the road it's going to be legal? Okay, if you're going to legalize it, just legalize it. Don't
Unless there really is some kind of a big money laundering scheme going on there. I mean,
well, I don't know, and I guess there could be, but it's probably more likely because it's probably a technicality based on how they're having to follow these loopholes to where they can call it money laundering, would be my guess. But either way, if it's legal, just let it be legal. I mean, you got meth heads, killing people and robbing people. You got people overdosing, literally dying in the streets from fentanyl, and you're acting like you're out here doing something by going after these shops. Okay, I get what you're saying. We got to follow the law, and the law says it's not legal to sell for a year or 2 more or whatever.
really didn't seem like that's what they were going after though with that money laundering thing. Like, if you think if everything is on a cash only system, I mean that's how private individuals cheat on their taxes anyway. I would imagine it's just if everything is always paid in cash, you can report less.
Well, even if it is, I guess it's about taxes, and that could be too.
Yeah.
They could be wanting to steal that tax money.
That's what I'm saying. Like if they didn't go after certain cannabis stores, was it maybe because they had good receipts?
Yeah.
And they weren't cheating on their taxes,
Maybe. Well, I've heard also that the way that they operate is that they maybe buy a sticker or T-shirt or something, and then it comes with a free gift, and maybe they're saying, oh well, this free gift is not on the books, so therefore, what are you doing with the money? Some kind. I think it may be related to the way that they're getting
like
around.
They're underreporting how much they're
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
I think maybe that they're getting around the way that they're getting around the laws that are making it illegal for them to sell it, but they can give it away as a gift. That may have something to do with why they're going after them in this way. But like you said, they only went after some of them.
There's so many. Like, I know most of the people that listen aren't even from this area, but like, if you just drive through Bristol, Virginia, you can't help see but like 6 places they're selling with quotations weed. Now, I'm be honest with you, I don't know how they work, but there's an awful lot of cars going in and out of the parking lots for me to think that they actually care about it. So to me, it just really did look like the Fed wanted to tax a few of those stores, just in my uneducated opinion.
Yeah, and it could also be that, if you want to play this game, you've got to pay in these areas, and maybe they're not greasing their right palms in order to not have their places looked at. But either way, it just all seems kind of silly to me, guys. It's a fucking plant. People have been growing it and smoking it since the dawn of time. People are going to grow it and smoke it until there's not any people around anymore. And the idea that you can, use that to extort more money out of people by convincing them that it's something that they should be ashamed of or something that that they shouldn't be allowed to do is ridiculous to me. And how about go out and actually work on stopping? The reason people don't like the police around here is they they're spending all their time doing things like this instead of actually. The main reason that people are upset with the police is because the meth heads and the tweakers and folks go around and get to basically do whatever they want. They don't really get in much trouble. They get released to do it again. And meanwhile, the unfair things happen to people who, tend to be following the law for the most part, and then they get the book thrown at them. When somebody's, pretty much a a good citizen, as they would call it, or model citizen, and they fuck up, they get the book thrown at them more often than the people who are, career criminals. And, not that I'm not unsympathetic to, or even unempathetic to folks who have gotten on drugs and who have had a hard time with life. But you can't just let them carry on and destroy society. You actually have to find some way to put them away and stop them from hurting the rest of us, or
eat them. No
or
more
what,
eating the
or
rich.
what are you even out there for? I mean, what are you even out there for?
No more eating the rich. Let's eat the druggies. You get high in the process.
Very high, I'd say.
Oh man, you eat the drug. It's like zombieism. You eat the druggies and then you're a meth head.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the main reason. That's one of the main reasons that people that don't have a lot of respect for the police anymore is because they're not doing anything about the problem that's actually right on their front door that they can see. The trailer next door, people with kids, and they're cooking meth over there, and they call the cops and nothing gets done about it. But
What's the Sylvester Stallone movie? Is it Copland?
that is a movie. So
You don't know about where he's
I
a
don't
New Jersey cop?
Stop her, my mom will shoot.
Do you remember Copland?
I remember that it was a movie. I don't
It was
remember.
the synopsis of it because it's relevant. I'm pretty sure it's where all the New York City cops that worked in New York City lived in Jersey, and they lived in the same town, and they pretty much found this dopey, kind of washed up old. Kind of like they gave him he's a hero, but like they made him the sheriff and they kept him propped up as the sheriff because he would let them slide. Basically, the whole town's driving drunk all the time and coming home from the city, and they get to do whatever they want to. The whole story's about how he eventually kind of like it's like this. I'm changing this, and goes around and does some different stuff. But it's called Copland. I don't remember if it's any good or not, but it's a Stallone film about corrupt New York City cops getting their ass kicked by a Jersey cop.
Rocky. That's another movie that Zoomers should watch to be
I don't
normal.
know, man. I think that might just teach you to get punched in the face over and over again.
Yeah, but the point is, you keep going. Even after you get punched in the face over and over again,
block.
you just don't stop.
Maybe learn a little.
You don't block. You eat it. You eat it. You eat it and you keep coming.
So stupid. He's from Philadelphia. He didn't know the Philly shell. You know what I'm saying? That's ridiculous. He just sat there and took punches in the face over and over again. It's ridiculous.
But the guy got tired. I mean,
What a way to wear him out.
Yeah, Apollo did it and knock him out in the first one, though, didn't he?
Well, actually, that's
won
not
by
a
decision in the first one.
yeah, because the whole victory was a moral victory that he lasted.
Yeah.
But like, that's actually a boxing technique. You just don't use your face.
Yeah.
What was it? Tyson Fury used that against Deontay Wilder in the first fight, which was he's a fat guy.
Yep.
He just stayed on top and let him wear his arms out by hit his love handles.
Yep, and but the point is, Rocky does his own version of the hero's journey, and
Gets CTE in the process.
but he never gives up. That's the main thing. He keeps on fighting, even though and then he eventually does, beat Apollo, who becomes his friend, who gets killed by the Drago, and then we turn into anti-Russian Cold War propaganda there in the fourth film, and then by the time we get to Machine Gun Tommy or Tommy Gun or whatever, the Rockies lost my interest by then.
I watched what was it called? Just Rocky, I think it was the fifth one.
Yeah.
Where he comes back, and I guess it was okay. I didn't hate it, but like I said, I don't really. I
I like Stallone in that new show he's in, Tulsa King.
hadn't seen it.
This is kind of fun. I was watching it with my father-in-law. I just saw like 2 episodes of it. It's kind of fun. He gets out of prison. He's like an old maid who went to prison and gets out, and they basically, since you were such a good guy and didn't rat on us and made your way in prison, you're in charge of Tulsa now. And, it's kind of a shithole town for a gangster, a made man to be in charge of. And
Yeah.
it's kind of him, coping with that and running Tulsa. But anyway, I think that's you got any more movies that Zoomers need to see in order to be normal before we go?
Starship Troopers.
That's a good one.
So you can learn that violence is the only thing that you need to really learn in life.
I think Starship Troopers is a good one.
I don't know.
If you understand this. That's another one of those that's like, I don't think Zoomers would even realize it was satire now, though. You know?
I don't think maybe we don't give them. I don't think we give Zoomers enough credit. They're just.
Actually, I think Zoomers are a lot more based than we realized there, but a lot of them grew up in the world that's already here. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think the whole point was that if they watch today's movies exclusively, they're going to be fucked up living in a fake world and basing all their their morals and their ideas of what's possible off of something that's not based in reality or real human nature, that kind of thing.
I think I would, as odd as it might be, think actually you can go with scripture, which would be Solomon. He said, I can't remember which verse it is. It's in Ecclesiastes, but he says, "He who increases his knowledge increases his own vexation," which is the shorter version of that. Is the more you know, the more you're going to suffer, because you're just putting more knowledge of the suffering of the world in your head. So I really do think. I think the internet really is a problem. Like, I don't think we can wake up every single day and handle all of the world's problems. I really do think we'd be better if we didn't do that, because, you don't have anything to worry about. If you don't know about it, you can't worry about it,
Yep. But it's also, we also have a responsibility to make our world the best we can, but that can't be done by focusing on all the problems in the world, because it's too big for you to take on. So it's good for us to, like I said in some of these movies, to recognize what our fight is and to fight that fight the best we can. And that's what we try to do here every day at the Iron Mountain Hour. And that's what, we don't always succeed. But I think that's what we try to do in our personal lives, and I'm sure you do too. But we appreciate you joining us tonight. We are going to get out of here. It's 11:30. I got an early work day. Oh, it's 11:43. I got an early work day tomorrow. So we will see you on Thursday night. I didn't even realize I didn't do Thursday. I was working, and I was working overnight, and it's like, I guess I'm not doing the show tonight.
I actually just assumed.
Well, I didn't really forget. I just forgot it was Thursday, and then I was like, I guess I can't do it. But anyway, sorry about that. We'll be back Thursday night where Tim and I will get into our news and current events roundup. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you then. Have a good night, everybody.
Brownies.
Almond.